Let's try that. Hi, everybody. How you doing, everybody? Broadcasting live from home. This is my living room, as you see. I have it set up exactly like a scale model of KFI. Not really. This is the actual studio of KFI. Yeah, pick a mic sock. But since I already had it, I really don't care. You know what? Postscriptum is such a fucking huge game. I cannot get it to run on my new HP all-in-one. But I think part of the reason is that I kind of have narrow bandwidth because I'm using radio internet from Antelecom.
Did you hear that guy talk about his symptoms? Did you hear him talk about his symptoms?
I didn't hear
What if
this.
they mirrored yours?
I didn't hear that. Did he say? It's funny because Kennedy's just getting over it right now in New York.
Really?
Yeah, and she
How
had the.
painful it was to breathe. It would burn, and he had a chest pains, and it was tough.
Yeah, like she didn't have that, and I didn't have that, and we both had the low grade fever. Yes, he is cootie filled. Oh, I forgot all my shit on the printer. Gotta get my printer shit. I'll talk about this a little bit tonight, but I just picked this up on advice from a friend of mine, former Special Forces soldier Terry Shepard, who maybe if you see, if you watch Fox enough, you've seen him. And he does that Hollywood, how did they do it in the movie, or is that realistic? I forget what it's called, but he recommended this book, How to Survive by John Hudson. John Hudson is the chief of the British military's Survival, Escape, Rescue, and Evasion School, former helicopter pilot. So far, great book. I'm only into it 30 pages, but the guy is really good about the mental part. And if Shepard says so, then I buy. It's not even in paperback. So
Toad, 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 asshole.
I have to beep out ass. I've been playing asshole on the air.
Chinese tone. A Chinese tone.
Okay, there we go. I'll lower the beep, in fact.
He said roping off states would amount to a federal declaration of war. President Trump has signed a $2.2 trillion stimulus package to help Americans get through the pandemic. The funding is meant to help workers suddenly without income and businesses struggling through.
There we go.
I want to thank Republicans and Democrats
China, Chinese tone.
There we go.
and putting America first.
Members of the House had to race back to Washington yesterday because the Republican from Kentucky wanted a quorum and a roll call vote. The federal emergency aid package is the largest in history. Some of music's biggest names are coming together to entertain the world from their living rooms. Elton John is hosting the iHeart Living Room Concert for America on Friday.
All right, I am queued up with the open.
Says that the goal is to raise money to help Americans hurt by the pandemic. We have two great organizations that we're focused on feeding America.
Yeah, you can find it on YouTube. It's a guy in Hong Kong. He's a short little fat Chinese guy, and he's holding a banner. And some journalist goes up to him and starts talking to him, and he says, "Do you have a message for Donald Trump?" The guy goes, "Donald Trump, don't trust China. China's asshole."
Good news in South LA on the 105.
Yeah, this was a crash on the 105 westbound at Vermont. It's been cleared for planes. Your drive is recovering from that area. Cars, we have worked some of this on the
I should have done this on Twitch because that way I can monitor on Twitch. But
evening. You're seeing a 10-minute delay from
I think I can do the same thing on YouTube.
Irvine. This is on the 405 northbound at Irvine Center Drive. Cleanup crews from a crash on the right shoulder there. Your drive is
I saw a good personalized plate
fine, and this guy helps get you there.
on the way in. Some guy with a Honda Rock Tracker, whatever they're called, that Honda pickup. And his plate was California personalized, numeral 4, and then pew pew, P-E-W, P-E-W, 4 pew pew. So, the North Koreans just fired some missiles.
No Bubba's here, ma'am. Got a close reference for a $99 stoppage page at thesmellgoodplumber.com. And call 800-446-MIKE. Contractor license number 399-179.
This is Mike Diamond, and I guarantee my plumber will show up on time and smell good, or your house call is free.
Southwest weather from KFI, partly cloudy, lows tonight in the 40s and 50s. Tomorrow will be partly cloudy with highs in the low to mid 60s, possible upper 60s and 70s spots, and then sunny and warmer for Monday. High 60s to low to mid 70s Monday, and even warmer for Tuesday. More clouds though, high 60s and 70s near the coast, and then getting all the way up
Oh,
to inland areas on Tuesday. Pretty much the same for Wednesday. Right now, 57.
I'm at like 98% batteries. I think we're good for tonight.
61 in Baldwin Park. We lead local live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Michael Shapiro.
Donald Trump, don't trust China. China is tone.
Dark secret place.
This radioactivity is coming from
Brian Suits on KFI.
nearby. A complete radio transmitter will actually broadcast from tape before the shot.
I'm so embarrassed you heard me burp.
I would bomb the shit out of them.
Dark secret place with Brian Suits on KFI.
KFI AM 640. It is a Dark Secret Place. Brian sits in here until 11, live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And I just Lysoled the crap out of this mic sock. Was that a mistake? Does it sound like I'm talking through an aquarium? I just don't. I love how they'll get us. They'll get us these letters, you know, and I do have to read this before I broadcast. I do have to read this. Ladies and gentlemen, by authority of the Federal Communications Commission, and to whom it may concern, the bearer of this letter with my iHeartMedia identification card has access to all iHeartMedia facilities. I broadcast under the authority of the Communications Act of 1934 as amended in U.S. Code Title 47, Section 151. Also, I'll have you all know that the bearer of this other letter is providing emergency communications sustainment and restoration support to critical communications infrastructure facilities in response to the COVID-19 declaration of national emergency of 16 March 2020. These critical communication facilities and KFI are necessary, that's a cheap shot, to ensure first responder, emergency responders, public messaging, and 911 communications providing da-da-da. So anyway, I'm on, by the way, I'm streaming on YouTube tonight. If you go to unsheepyourself.com, you can be part of the party. If you have questions, that's where to direct them. Go to unsheepyourself.com and join the live stream, and I'll answer those questions during commercials and things like that. But as you see, this is an unclassified letter from the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency's National Communications Coordination Branch. That's right, the CISA's NCC. So, like I say, I love how we have ID cards. We have our armbands, our jackboots, but we can't get. Oh, you didn't get an armband? But we can't get our own individual piece of foam to put over the microphone. So I have no idea which. Probably the last person to log on here was John Cobalt. That's who I had to change ID from. So forensically, going backwards, that's who was physically here last. And I don't know. John once went down his kid's slide and his hand went into a pile of poop from the workers who assembled the slide. So I don't know what to think. I assume between then and now. Yeah, there's a famous story that he hired these guys to put together one of those big kits in the backyard. And he went down the slide and one of the workers had just dropped a deuce in his backyard. And ever since then, I just can't, we have viral wipes, like Lysol wipes, which actually list coronavirus, which is a type of virus. It has an actual lipid outer cell wall, and it's defeated by Clorox wipes and all that. But then we also have the nuclear one, the Super Sanicloth. And it does bactericidal, tuberculocidal, and virucidal in 2 minutes. This is, you can take all of the viral wipes around here, but if you don't have one of these purple top Santa Claus things, then you're AAA. You're not killing critters the way that I am in here. And you're damn right I've got no problem putting this all over my face. So there's that, and then also if I have to, I can go glove. I brought nitrile gloves. If you can't find gloves, here's a pro tip. There's this little family-owned store called Walmart. And if you go back to the automotive section, most people are going, they're going into the medical section. You're looking for latex or sometimes nitrile gloves. Go back to the auto section. That's wow. That's getting me high. What's the active ingredient of this? dimethyl ethanol. Did you hear in Iran, there's some idiot on social media said that if you drink methyl alcohol, then it'll cure coronavirus. So over 300 people have died of alcohol poisoning. And not the good kind of alcohol poisoning, where you just have too many gin and tonics your sophomore year before the big UCLA at Wazoo up in Pullman game. No, the bad kind, the actual methyl alcohol. Like you went to Pep Boys and bought yellow bottles of Heat and drank those. Yeah, you don't do that. So anyway, 300 are dead. If you're not dead, if you survive, you're blind for the rest of your life. So there is that. The breaking news that is not Corona involved is ballistic missiles out of Korea, ballistic missiles out of Yemen. We'll get to that, and reports coming in about coronavirus hitting the refugee population in Syria. and a very, very bad scene happening there. Just that no American correspondents on the ground there. And you'll see if you watch the news, there's kind of a bigger story these days. So what's funny is, in many ways, the world goes on, and including conflict in the world, in spite of a worldwide pandemic. Quick moment of silence for my brothers and sisters in sports radio. That'll do it. Yeah, I vicariously, I could never do it because you have to be really, really, really dedicated into everything from golf to NASCAR and crap like that. But man, I gotta say, can you imagine one day if the weather stopped? What would they do on the Weather Channel? No, it's gonna be 77 and clear again today. In sports radio, I mean, there's just nothing except trades in the NFL. And I feel bad for them. They're having to get creative. But I also, from what I've seen, a lot of sports radio listeners aren't going away. I mean, you're all in it together. Believe me. Here in our living, in what we do for a living, the news will never stop. And I mean, that's my running joke about Dark Secret Place, is that this is where you come to track the world melting down, because the world's always melting down, because there's always history. And, the news is the first draft of history. I think that's one of the reasons that I'm sitting here watching the news all day long, is because I want to know what's going to be history in an hour. And that's part of the reason, by the way, if you do want to hear that January 25th show where I was reading the 2021 CDC final report on the COVID outbreak in Los Angeles and California, that's my pinned tweet at Dark Secret Place. Here's where we're at as of 8:12 Pacific Standard Time. The big news is that the president is, according to what? How do I turn those notifications off in Chrome? I don't want the next one. Okay. Is a tri-state quarantine. Now, keep in mind that the death toll in New York is doubling every 2 days. And that, by the way, that's not a function of testing. Again, like we've been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, when reliable tests are perfected, there should be either a gigantic random sample of Americans, I mean, to the tune of 100,000 from Maine to California, or mandatory testing for everybody, because right now, with the admonition that we're still getting, for instance, from LA County Public Health, if you're not symptomatic, don't be tested. Well, that builds in an automatic, what's called confirmation bias. In other words, if you did a survey of who wants to buy a home, but you only surveyed people who had applied for a mortgage or approved for a mortgage, well, that'd be a confirmation bias. Well, it turns out that 99% of Americans want to own a home immediately. And so that's a very important thing, because we're now going on 3 weeks since the Italians released their first tranche of when they were at 803 dead, they released the first tranche of demographic data. And that's when we discovered that nobody under the age of 30 had died, that only 2 people under the age of 50 had died, and that the disease was nearly 27% lethal in males over 70. And so the disease, very specifically, is very deadly to people over 65. And so as this goes on and on and on, they continue to emphasize, well, anyone can get it. Well, someone at the age of 17 died in Lancaster. Then they pulled back and said, well, they were positive for COVID-19, but that's not the proximate or the cause of death. But they keep emphasizing, just turn this down. I don't know what the hell. I have like a week of, I didn't see this. Princess Maria, I'll turn my speaker down. Princess Maria Teresa of Spain died after testing positive for bug. 86. 86 years old. Yeah, she was from the royal family of Spain, but anyway, 86, and she's dead. And so anyway, they keep emphasizing, well, anyone can get it. That's not the issue. Again, but well, the issue is anyone can get it and therefore be a carrier. That's why people need to take the self quarantining seriously and the whole thing. But it does appear that the lethality for people under 50 or under 55 is slightly more than this year's flu. And so there is one way to nip this in the bud, and it's to go really hard, harder than we are now. So we're at a tipping point now where either you do things like consider a tri-state quarantine, which would be New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. How much you want to bet this time next week? The roadblocks are in place. And the governor of New York was wondering, well, by what legal authority? Buddy, you better talk to your attorney general, because that arrow is in a president's quiver. It's also in a governor's quiver. By the way, it's in a mayor's quiver. Public law, we have not even begun to scratch the surface of public law. Not a bit of it. Helicopter was circling a skate park up in Malibu earlier today, telling people to get the hell off the skate park. I'll play you that here in just a second. And yeah, the train full of tanks in Los Angeles. Is it Jade Helm 2020? What is it? We'll talk about that when we come back. Plus some of the latest and some mental health for you, survival wise. It is the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits here live on unsheepyourself.com. Check that out if you want to join in and ask me questions. Meanwhile, here on the radio, live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app, Michael Chappé with the news.
Orange County's number of cases of COVID-19 coronavirus has ballooned to over 400 now after another 85 cases were confirmed today, and there's been another death, bringing the county's coronavirus death toll to 4 now. LA City Council has taken emergency measures to address a worsening crisis, ordering an extension of a halt on residential and commercial evictions. Tenants in LA now have up to 12 months to repay past due rent. Commercial tenants will have 3 months. The COVID-19 pandemic and an oil price war between Saudi Arabia and Russia driving Southland gas prices to their lowest level since late December of 2017. The average price per gallon of self-serve regular in LA County dropped overnight to a little over $3.14. The OC, it's just under $3.11 a gallon. For up-to-the-minute info on the coronavirus, you can go to our website, KFIAM640.com, keyword virus. Check out the drive on the 71 next.
In these trying times, feels like we're all doing what we can. So it's good to hear that.
Yeah, I was watching Cuomo get all upset about quarantine. It's like, you wanted him to take harsh measures, and then now you don't? I'm really confused.
Yeah, at this point, it's all posing. You know, he could pick up the phone and talk to Trump directly.
Related to expedited checks, debit cards, overdrafts, and excessive savings account transactions for 120 days. Ally is
The whole freaking country should be on at least stay-at-home order.
And there's another. Our friends at CVS, who are there to help us be prepared and stay healthy during the current health situation. CVS is offering free 1 to 2 day delivery of prescriptions and everyday essentials, which is a huge help. Some restrictions do apply. Go to CVS.com or call your local pharmacy to get started.
Partly cloudy, lows tonight 40s and 50s. Tomorrow's highs under partly cloudy skies will be in the 60s. Crash in Pomona on the 71.
Yeah, this is on the 71 northbound, right after a hold. You know, it's out of lanes even on the right shoulder, but it is an attention getter, so watch for today's session. You have that work zone, 710 southbound from the 5 to Atlantic. 3 left lanes going to be shut down until 10 tomorrow evening. You're seeing delays just after Olympic. And in Moreno Valley, this is on the 215 northbound, just before Cactus. We're getting reports of debris in the middle lanes there. CHP is going to be running a break, so watch for slowing as you approach this area. This report is sponsored by Stand Up to Cancer. KFI, if the sky helps get you there faster. I'm Brian Vance.
I'm Tony Goldwyn. 20 years ago, when my mom had lung cancer, she didn't have many choices. But today, you do. If you've been diagnosed with lung cancer, please visit standuptocancer.org/lungcancer to learn more.
Contractor license 104771.
$29 will make a world of difference in the efficiency of your air conditioner, because just $129 is all it costs to have one of my genius.
I can't queue up a
Complete system rejuvenation.
We're going to clean and adjust.
song because I don't know if my computer's in queue. I'm apparently like the only host that, besides Gary Hoffman, me and Gary edit our own sound and play our own bumpers and stuff. Yeah. If you didn't have a weapon before now, Villanueva is really turning out to be the worst elected official in LA County. Also, because I tend not to do this on the air, but a lot of COVID-19 people on ventilators are getting pneumonia. And there's viral pneumonia and there's bacterial pneumonia. And you can tomorrow go to, wait, is he in there? Am I in queue? You can go to Rite Aid or Walgreens or whatever tomorrow, and for about $100, you can get Pneumovax. If you're under 65, you can get the PPCV 23 Pneumovax. If you're over 65, you get Prevnar. But you can get a vaccine. I get it every 10 years. My mom died of pneumonia in the hospital, and I get the pneumococcal pneumonia shot every 10 years. There is no viral pneumonia vaccine, but bacterial pneumonia is about like 70% of pneumonias are bacterial pneumonia. So you can get a vaccine and not worry about it. You can go into the hospital on a ventilator with COVID-19 and not worry about it.
5% off on any new preferred order of fruits and veggies. Start your journey to better health today by calling 1-800-2468-751 or by going to balanceofnature.com and make sure to receive this special radio offer by using discount code KFI.
Have you still not refinanced your mortgage? Well, soon you might be kicking yourself in the head. Rates are at historic lows, so take advantage of our new fast track loan with an unbelievable low rate of 3.5%.
How much time?
With our no closing costs 30-year fixed loan. That's right, no points.
Oh, wait.
What's the hope of Remax Financial? A trusted lender for over 20 years. Even if you refinance
Hello, yet.
you can save up to thousands of dollars a year. This amazing 3.25 rate and APR won't last long, and our new process can get it done in record time. So call today, 844
We're going with Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon.
3669. It's the biggest no-brainer in the history of mankind. Call us at 844-425-3669.
I will. Also, The Dish. All right, I am queued. I went long in the first break, so this is going to be a short break. You'll notice that everybody actually in music and radio, we don't wear Beats by Dr. Dre. We wear the professional standard, the Sony MDR V6. This is it. Everybody wears these. You go into any recording studio that's not connected to Dr. Dre. No matter how tore up they get, you're just kind of in love with them. I've never liked Sennheiser headphones. Oh, I hit that right on. Did anyone hear that? I hit that right fucking on. I'm the Postmaster General in music radio. KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Oh, I hit that post. Shuddy and Chevy. And Dark Secret Place in here until 11. We'll get back to contemplating a tri-state quarantine around New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. If it gets much worse, you're going to hear 47 other states recommending such a thing. And what I talk about in my nightmare scenario, War of the Worlds from January 25th, is that it gets so out of hand in Los Angeles that Los Angeles would be fairly easy to seal off at PCH 101 at Thousand Oaks, Newhall Pass, and then the 10, the 15 south, and all that. Let me start with this. I went long in the first break, so it's gonna be sort of a short break. Bunch of video came through on Thursday from panicky people seeing a train, a 2-mile long train leaving Ventura Naval Base, coming through LA, and it had tanks. It was full of tanks and self-propelled artillery. It was full of Mike 109 or Alpha 6 Paladin self-propelled artillery pieces, which are not tanks, by the way, so just stop it. But then in the meantime, a bunch of M1A1s, M1A2s, a bunch of tanks. And of course, people up on, what is it, San Fernando Road? Or no, it actually went right down I-5. It passed, I think, right through Burbank. And people were like pulling over and shooting video of this endless train of tanks. And then by sundown, that train was out of California. Or it was on its way to Fort Irwin. And people were just freaking out, saying, oh my God, they're falling in on us. They're not telling us. Okay, a couple things. First of all, you must know this. And unfortunately, I have a really bad feeling you're going to find this out in the worst way possible in about 2 weeks. There's no more tanks in California. In the California Army National Guard, no more tanks. That's so 2010. There's no more tank battalions in California. None. There's no more. There's not going to be tanks. And then secondly, none of this stuff happens without a gubernatorial order. And that's public business. There's no secret deployment. Ask mommy or daddy about 1992. You know, did the California National Guard, like the Spanish Inquisition, just show up down on Crenshaw? That's not how that works. It has to be approved. So when it happens, and by the way, word around the campfire is that a certain governor wants himself $1 billion campaign commercial, not my words, but $1 billion campaign commercial, and that would be a large call-up of the California National Guard. For whatever purpose, of course, right now it's humanitarian, but in 2 or 3 weeks it may not be if more LA Sheriff Department and more LAPD get infected, and the ones who are currently asymptomatic do get tested. It might be ugly because there's 2 ways to go. You can rely on neighboring counties to assist you. Like it's very possible that LA would have to surge deputies out of Palmdale and Lancaster down into Santa Clarita or the Valley, and then they would request that Kern County do some basic functions in the Antelope Valley. That could work, but it would take some pretty major muscle movements. But the National Guard's purpose would be to back up civilian law enforcement while they're on state time, on Newsom time. But they're not showing up in tanks. And even if they wanted to, they couldn't because they're not in this state anymore. And even if they were in this state, they don't have enough crews to fill them. So this is where, when I see uninformed speculation like this on the Twitter machine, I get really frustrated. You know, the way that an epidemiologist will get frustrated with radio shows calling COVID a bacteria. Or saying that there's a blood immunity test that you can get anytime now or something like that. This is the same thing. Ventura's a port, Pedro, Long Beach, those are ports, but they're very expensive. You should be grateful that they go through a naval base because it's very expensive to go through Pedro or Long Beach. So they're using government facilities to offload that. But don't worry, the tanks aren't coming to your house. And if it ever came to that, by the way, you would be over the moon to see troops in uniform on LA streets, if it ever got to that, just like 92. Back in a second. KFI AM640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Michael Chappé with news. Yeah, when in the next 5 to 7 days, when more symptomatic law enforcement officers are coming forward and getting tested. For instance, right now, right now, they should just mandatorily test all LAPD and LA Sheriff's Department. Symptoms or no, they should test every firefighter, LA City, LA County, every deputy, and every LAPD. But they're not. Even those guys have to be symptomatic. And that's fucking retarded. That is stupid. Really, really, really stupid. Because they have a lot of deputies who are positive but asymptomatic. They need to go home and quarantine right now, or they need to all be put on the same shift. So, what, you were seeing 4 tank platoons at Pendleton? Because, I mean, Camp Pendleton, Camp Pendleton is a Marine Corps base. But it would take a declaration of martial law by the National Command Authority for federal military to leave Camp Pendleton and do civil disorder shit. That's what happened in 1992. Is we were called up on Title 32 by Duke Magian. Wasn't that the governor in 92? We were on state time for 3 days, and then it went to martial law. We were on federal time. 7th Infantry came down from Monterey. Marines came up from Pendleton. And that's how that worked. You can't. Only I can. Yeah, Sam Castaneda, he was lying. There is no... By the way, when 4 firefighters are injured in a structure fire, they'll give us their number and their condition. Right? That's not a HIPAA violation. You're not giving out their name and their social security number. So Chief Osby was lying last week when he said, a reporter said, how many LA County FD are on quarantine? And he said, I've been advised that I can't answer that because it may be a HIPAA violation. He should not do that, because for his PIO to not tell him that that's going to be flagged by someone like me, it erodes public trust. That's what they did. It absolutely eroded public trust because it was a flat out lie. And MIQ?
Everything is alright because the only it ever teach me was the son of the only one who could calm each other's no, telling me that he's all mine.
Yep. What I do is when I play a bumper, a lot of times the people always play the start of the song, and a lot of times in a lot of songs, like "Son of a Preacher Man," the meat, your favorite part of the song, is 2 minutes into it. And I started doing that when I did a morning show. It's like, why? Why play the beginning when it takes 50 seconds for the song to do something? I'm queued up.
During the coronavirus outbreak. It's very affordable, as low as $23 per month if you qualify. Dial pound 250 and say the keywords Internet Now to see if you're eligible.
You know who really loves fresh food? Amateur chefs, barbecuers, smorgasborders.
I didn't see what you just said, David Praise. I'll give you a cooler one if you have another David Butchers thing. Okay. Is it a Lockheed Martin one? 'Cause I have one of those. And I've got an F-35 one with all the participating flags. And it has turkey on it. But we're going to wind up selling F-35s to Turkey.
At jobs.kroger.com.
Oh, Marines?
On this station, go to
Nah.
KFIAM640.com/rules.
Good quarantine tip: check in on folks who may feel isolated during all of this. Bad quarantine tip: doing it in person with a big sloppy kiss and a high five. The phone would do nicely. KFI AM 640, more stimulating talk.
Second wave of the hit to China's industrial base is happening right now. I'll get that to you here now, just a second. But there are rumors, by the way, of a surprise presidential visit, maybe on Monday or Tuesday. More on that tomorrow. Earlier today, President Trump considered imposing a quarantine on the tri-state area, restricting travel in and out of New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Governor Cuomo argues such a measure would not be legally enforceable. He's wrong about that, and I don't know why he would be caterwauling about that anyway, because he sees what's happening in New York. And by the way, within the state of New York, they're discussing isolating Manhattan. So, and other parts of Bronx and Brooklyn. So I don't know what he's talking about. So at this point, I have 5 personal friends. Well, I'm counting myself. I have 4 personal friends who were diagnosed, and then they were symptomatic, then diagnosed, and then it had its run, and they're over it now. One of them is in New York, and their symptoms came on pretty quickly. There was a low-grade fever. There was one night there was a sort of a spiky fever, and then it was over. And the whole thing took a course of about 5 days. There is talk, and then as I've said, I have a fraternity brother who is a first responder in Kirkland, Washington, where that elderly home or that long-term care facility was the first outbreak in the state of Washington and in the country, in fact. And they were quarantined immediately. 14 of the first responders were quarantined. And within a couple of days, he had a bout. He had like a 3 or 4 day bout. And when he was done, he said, well, that's it. And what they did was they made him quarantine for 2 days with a normal temperature. So he had to show a normal temp for 2 days before he could go home. Now, the next step that the University of Washington Virology Center is doing is what's called convalescent sera. And if you had COVID-19 and you recovered, then there's going to be a bloom of IgG and IgM in your immune system, from your immune system. These are types of white blood cells. And just a simple elevation in those could indicate that you just recovered from an infection. It may be bacterial or maybe viral because your body reacts the same way. But the assumption is if you tested positive for COVID-19 a week ago and then you were sick and now we're seeing that, then chances are your body was reacting to COVID-19, and the chances are better than good that in your serum, the antibodies, the newly developed antibodies exist. And it's an old therapy that I take a unit of your blood out, and I say this as a former medical lab tech at the University of Washington, at the Army. I take a unit of your blood out, and I can spin it down. I can spin the red blood cells down to the bottom of the bag, and I can squeeze out the serum. And in that serum is the properties that we're talking about, the antibodies. They exist in the serum. Your blood is several components, but it's red. But it's funny, if you spin it down, you'll see that it's almost 2/3 serum, and then those RBCs are packed down there at the bottom. And in that serum are the antibodies. And so as long as I'm sticking it into the right blood type, then we're good. And so some of the people who are confirmed to have had it are now giving convalescent serum to the University of Washington. This is something that a lot of viral researchers are looking at: is will recoverers of COVID-19 have that? And what it does is when someone's initially diagnosed, you put the convalescent serum from another confirmed case into that person, especially an elderly person. And the idea here is that you jumpstart their immune system by putting in the remnants. After your body identifies something for the first time, your body creates an antibody called a memory T cell, and it lasts for the rest of your life. There are people who there were smallpox outbreaks in London in the late 1800s, and people had been inoculated with a little, pin when they were 5 and 6, and it was thought, well, they're not immune anymore, and the survival rate was extremely high because that's how your immune system works. It learns something. You have these things that, for a while, they're actually called naive T cells, which is kind of sad. But a new pathogen enters your body immediately produces, you get a fever and you get sick because your body's making what's called IgM, immunoglobulin M. And that's like the shock troops. They show up with bare fists and sticks and just fight everything. And then your body produces immunoglobulin G. And then also in this process, your body meets this new thing, in this case a virus. It learns the outer protein on it, and it creates its own countermeasure called a memory T cell. Well, if you had COVID-19, the treatment, and it's worked in the past for other viruses, that if 1 or 2 people give a unit of blood and that's spun down to the serum, that can provide possibly that leg up that someone who might have underlying conditions might need. So that's what's going on, for instance, with some of these firefighters in the state of Washington. Is they're part of that experiment. So I find that quite interesting. It's a stopgap, and by the way, that's not a vaccine. Vaccine, don't hold your breath for it. But there are therapies. The number one non-pharmaceutical intervention, as it's called, is what we're doing right now, which is social distancing. If you want to turn it up a notch, now we start talking about mandatory quarantines, which are definitely in the purview of LA County Public Health, state of California, and in the nightmare scenario of the federal government. And then someone has to enforce them and all that. So anyway, so the latest on the tri-state quarantine, in the pattern of these things, it gets talked about. Cuomo pushes back. He realizes when he sees that this is out of control in his state, and that, by the way, other states are already asking people with New York plates to self-quarantine. If you drive into Florida with New York plates, which is happening, people are fleeing New York. And this is pissing Florida off because Florida has a far higher than average elderly population. And people are fleeing New York while they can, and they're coming to Florida. And so the Florida authorities, and by the way, they're not detaining anyone. They're just politely asking you, wherever you're going, can you stay there for 14 days? So more on this in a second. And like I say, the world goes on. The North Koreans, for the second weekend in a row, testing short-range ballistic missiles. What are they really? The Houthi rebels in Yemen testing medium-range ballistic missiles against their landing zone, their experimental landing zone called Riyadh. That and more, as war doesn't care about your damn pandemic. Back in a second. It is Brian Suits here till 11, KFI AM 640. The Dark Secret plays live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Michael Chappé with the news.
President Trump says the CDC has advised travel restrictions for Puerto Rico and Connecticut, where the
when he's in that tank.
virus has taken a heavy toll. Trump earlier said the
He's bouncing around in the loader's hatch. That's my favorite Dukakis video. Actually, no, he was in the TC's hatch. No, he was in the loader's hatch.
coronavirus pandemic. Hundreds of the revamped medical gear are to be shipped to LA come Monday. People in Long Beach are being put
Yeah, New York, because it's such a dense urban environment. And then the other thing is in Italy and Spain,
thefts, less than
men
$5,000, vandalism, and
kiss.
traffic crashes.
That is normal, just like in the Arab world. In America, if you're fighting the reflex to shake hands,
Police officers
Well, imagine fighting the reflex to do a double, Jacques Chirac, a double cheek kiss.
Drive on the 710 next.
Even with this craziness, termites are still eating your home, and they'll happily destroy your biggest investment right now. So, how about protecting your home? Because it still needs to be protected. And it's swarming season now, and Pacific Coast Termite is getting calls from KFI listeners who are seeing termites flying around the inside of their house. Ask Pacific Coast Termite for their free home inspection.
And, am I cue?
Doing their damage, certain restrictions apply. Their technicians are up to date on the latest safety precautions, and they maintain safe.
I ask him every time because that is how you solve out. I don't ever assume he put me in queue, because that's the quickest way to put something on the air that shouldn't be on the air. So it's a factor out the dummy drill. I always ask him, just like, is that weapon loaded? Yeah, because I'm a dumbass. Okay, get off the range.
Okay, Dax, it's time to do the Cabbage Patch. The running man, or something more contemporary, like floss. That's right, dance like a dad with your kids. Learn more at fatherhood.gov.
Retirement Planners of America specializes in retirement planning. Our goal is for you to have financial peace of mind and to help let your money last as long.
And if you start walling off areas all across the country, it would just be totally bizarre, counterproductive, anti-American, antisocial. And if you start walling off areas all across the country, it would just be totally bizarre, counterproductive, anti-American, antisocial. It wouldn't even be productive. Look, this virus, you don't know who has it.
The ceasing of public transport and closure of all non-essential business has now taken place, and that is just what we need. I applaud. However, I would like an understanding of our airports. Our airports must shut. The only flights to take place is to be for our essential medical equipment.
Message
Ceasing
from
of public transport and closure.
a message from Conor McGregor. I gotta record this.
The ceasing of public transport and closure of all non-essential business has now taken place, and that is just what we need. I applaud. However,
I should
I'd
open
like
up.
an
I'm
understanding of
going to
our
open up the
airports.
window on YouTube because I
airports
can't
must
see all the
shut.
questions
The only flights to take place is to be for our essential medical equipment,
scrolling.
or to bring our medical staff abroad back home to support. The airports must be shut for everything else. For those attempting to get home, please make wherever you are your home. You are doing your country an incredible deed by staying put. We will get past this. It is not forever, but it is for now. Tonight, our defense forces have been mentioned as a possibility in assisting our 15,000 Gardaí available, but only if necessary. However, it is necessary. I urge the government to utilise our defence forces alongside on Garda Síochána and for full 24-hour patrol. We cannot go by chance here. Any less than full adherence to these newly put forth methods by any members of our society will not only be a mockery to what we are attempting to do here, it will put the rest of our great nation in danger.
Conor McGregor, everybody.
And your SoCal Gas Company is stepping up too. During this time, your gas will not be turned off for non-payment. They'll keep making essential and emergency appointments too. So if you suspect a leak or have an outage, they'll be there. But maintaining a distance for safety. And they want you to beware of scammers because SoCal Gas does not call doing all they can to help you. We're all in this together and we'll get through this, LA.
Weekdays at 2. Monday at 5:30, we're going to have Dr. Anthony Fauci from President Trump's coronavirus task force. You see him at all the press conferences. Dr. Anthony Fauci on the John and Ken Show, 5:30 on Monday on KFI.
KFI AM 640, live everywhere on the iHeart Radio app. Dark Secret Place, Brian Suits in here until 11. Next hour, I'll grade local officials and their ability to inspire confidence in me going forward. But you know who had a great interview with Dr. Anthony Fauci is Seth Curry. If you, I didn't follow Seth Curry on Instagram until I heard that he interviewed Fauci, and I watched it. It was a good interview. And Fauci's a very animated guy when he's on his own, and he's a huge basketball fan and the whole thing. And Seth Curry, by the way, not a dummy, very, very smart guy. And like a smart guy interviewing a doctor, he had excellent questions prepped. And so it was. I'll share the link to it on Twitter. But if you follow the Instagram, that's on there. Here's Cuomo's response to like what Michael Chappé was saying is Trump is backing off of this concept earlier today about a tri-state quarantine, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York. Here's Cuomo's response to what he thinks about walling off a infected area.
And if you start walling off areas all across the country, it would just be totally bizarre, counterproductive, anti-American, anti-social. It wouldn't even be productive. Look, this virus, you don't know who has it.
He just made very compelling arguments for why you should wall off those 3 freaking states. Because, I'm sorry, it's bizarre. He's right. So was Escape from New York. So was Snake Plissken. I get it. Yeah, you're right. It's bizarre. Not doing enough. And it's out of hand in New York. But no, and my favorite part, okay, it would be totally bizarre. I concur. I agree. Anti-American? I don't know. I have a book you could read called The Great Influenza by John Barry. I got news there. My favorite part, though, is this.
It wouldn't even be productive.
Oh, wait. Here it is.
Anti-American, anti-social.
Yeah! You're absolutely right.
And anti-social.
That's the point. You've sold. Let's wall off New York.
Anti-social.
That's the point. I'm going to say this 8 more times.
Anti-social.
That's the point. Okay, just once. But what a weird laundry list of objections. You know what? It's not like Federico Fellini would be doing. I don't know that it would be that bizarre. There's an infected area. You seal it off. In fact, if you know anything about the history of the human race and pandemics, you'll find it is not bizarre in any way, shape, or form. It is, in fact, the norm. But this is his, and I'm not the president, but I would have pushed back on this.
And if you start rolling off areas all across the country, it would just be totally bizarre, counterproductive, anti-American, antisocial.
So the president, I guess the bottom line is that the president backed off because of that. Did he? Well, and also logistically, it would require federalizing the New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut National Guards overnight, mobilizing them, and getting them to enforce it and all that. Logistically, it would be really hard. There's a lot of interstates coming out of those states. There's a lot of ways to get out. And what would you be doing? Would you be just turning people around? That would be the most likely thing. Well, what if they got out of their cars and walked around you? Would you be physically detaining them? And at that point, you need a federal declaration of martial law. And this president's not prepared to do that. I don't think anyone's even brought it up to him. Young people need to start dying, which is not going to happen because that's not what this does. So right now, I'm looking at one projection, and it's based on confirmed cases per 1 million people, and it looks like, oh, look at that, everything is skyrocketing like the space shuttle. Well, again, it's because the confirmed cases are going up because more test kits are available, but they're still just being aimed at people who are symptomatic. And so if I found amputees and said, well, I'm just going to ask them if they're amputees, you'd find out that there was a 99% rate of amputation amongst amputees. And so that's part of the problem with this. The real issue for me, the red flag are the people who guarantee your civil order, in fact, are they getting emphasis? Are they getting priority to be tested? New York just did that. Good for them. Because they have over 500 officers that are now quarantined. But that's a department, New York City, and that's a department of something like 21,000. New York is heavily policed. We're not close. LAPD is like 9,000, 9,600, something like that. So we don't have that much room to give. But so if that starts to break down, this city doesn't react well to that. What happened back in 1918? Was there civil disorder in 1918, 1919? I'll have that answer right after this.
Antisocial.
It was antisocial back then. And also, Conor McGregor, the MMA fighter from Ireland, is calling on the Taoiseach, on the Prime Minister of Ireland, to call out the army and cancel all flights, cancel everything, call out the army. That's what a guy with a personally owned private jet is asking for the island of Ireland. Back in a second, it is hour number 2 of the Dark Secret Place, KFI AM 640, live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Okay, let's see what I can do here on the YouTube and start looking at questions. Well, probably the reason that the COVID is all over the homeless right now is the reason that fire are getting it.
I think that's part of the problem, is that we keep saying the people that die already had one foot in the grave. That doesn't that's not going to get anybody to stay home.
Yeah, that's emboldened young people.
Exactly. Burks did it, and then Ferrer keeps doing it. It's like, no. It's like these people skip Psychology 101 in college.
Yeah. Are you emboldened?
Yeah, worst thing happens, I get a week in bed, and then it's over.
All right. Now I'm streaming. Now I can see questions.
The man only identified as Mr. B is 101 years old. Mr. B was admitted to a hospital in Rimini, Italy last week after he tested positive for the coronavirus. He has recovered.
All right, let's see.
Mr. B has survived a prior pandemic. He was born during the Spanish flu, also known as the 1918 flu pandemic, which according
Okay, we're about 2 seconds behind.
to the world's population and killed an estimated 50 million.
No, it's not a beer.
Coronavirus killed more than 10,000 people in Italy. The deputy mayor of Rimini says Mr. B's recovery gives the country hope for the future. Layla Mohammed, KFI News.
Get up to the minute information on the coronavirus on our website at KFIAM640.com. Keyword virus. Work zone in Commerce on the 710.
Yeah, this is on the 710 southbound from the 5 to Atlantic. Green Lake Lane's going to be shut down until 10 tomorrow evening. You try to stop at Whittier Boulevard. Pomona, we have good news. Earlier crash that was on the 71 northbound at Holt, but has been cleared for lanes. Your drives up to full speed in that area. And in Irvine, 405 northbound at Center Drive. Solo no crash on the right shoulder there. Watch for delays as you approach. KFI and the Sky helps get you there faster. I'm Brian Banks.
Your forecast next.
In these trying times, feels like we're all doing what we can. So it's good to hear that businesses are doing good too. Like our friends at Ally. They recognize there's never been a more critical time to deliver on the promise to do the right thing. So Ally is deferring payment for auto and mortgage customers
Gina Grad doesn't have to do that. Adam Carolla knows me, knows how to contact me.
and for their bank. Ally is waiving all fees related to execution.
This is the 1939 San Francisco Seals. They wore this hat one year. Otherwise, they went back to the SF. This is from Ebbsfield Flannels in Seattle.
CVS is offering free
They make authentic recreations, right down to the satin on the visor, and then the goat hair here. So you can go to Ebbsfield.com.
Tonight will be in the 40s and 50s, and then tomorrow partly cloudy, highs in the 60s. Monday brings sunshine, temperatures a little bit warmer as well. 60s all the way to the low to mid 70s. Then warmer still for Tuesday with some more clouds in the afternoon. High 60s and 70s near the coast, and then topping out
I might go hatless this hour.
the inland areas, and pretty much the same.
Yeah, during SARS.
Cloudy side, but warm. Highs 70s and 80s, or I should say 70s to near 80. Right now 57 in Brea, 55 in Lake Forest, 57 in Marina Del Rey, and 55 degrees in Burbank. We lead local live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. I'm Michael Shapiro.
Dark secret place.
This radioactivity is coming from
Brian Suits on KFI.
nearby. A complete radio transmitter will actually broadcast from Cape before the shot.
I would bomb the shit out of them.
Dark Secret Place with Brian Suits on KFI.
KFI, AM 640, the Dark Secret Place, hour number 2. Brian sits in here tracking the world melting down. And normally, in normal times, our headline would be North Korea fires more missiles than ever amid coronavirus outbreak. This is the second weekend in a row. Also, Houthi rebels firing ballistic missiles at Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So normally those would be, leading in stuff, but because the world is melting down around us, obviously, and we're all affected personally. This is why this has been the subject now for the last couple of weeks. and I've taken particular interest in this since early January. Little tip: you might be doing a lot of reading lately, and I've had luck with Amazon still delivering, at least to my address or even to Amazon lockers. But a friend of mine, you might know him from Fox News, but and The Five and other shows, Greg Gutfeld show, but former U.S. Army Special Forces dude who does a couple TV shows, Terry Shapert, really funny guy. And we trade book tips back and forth, and he knows the guy who's the head of survival training in the UK military, the Army, Marines, Navy, Royal Air Force, everything. And it's a former helicopter pilot by the name of John Hudson. And he's been asked he's written different books and articles and things like that. And so he's been wanting to get around to a book just about the mindset needed for short-term survival, your car rolled off Mulholland, to your quarantine for 15 days or whatever. Anyway, the book is called How to Survive. I'm holding it up to the camera. By the way, I'm streaming on YouTube and on Sheep Yourself. Anyway, it's called How to Survive by John Hudson, standard spelling. And I got it. It's only in hardback. It's not in paperback yet. It's a brand new release, and I'm 30 pages into it, and I'm gripped. I'm just absolutely. I started reading it late this afternoon, and I wish I hadn't. But I'm going to get up early tomorrow just so I can read it all day tomorrow. But so far, really fascinated, and he's about sort of the mental preparation as well as the role of training and things like that. And I know that I've talked about this several times. I ended the show last week and began the show last week talking about mental health, and I'll repeat that and ask you to think about the past week. Remember 2 weeks ago, it seemed like the news was just getting worse hour by hour. And it seemed like the snowball was just getting bigger, and then you were asked to stay inside, and then non-essential businesses and all that. And my advice to you was to not fight what you're not in control of. Don't be surprised by surprise. And I think that now that you've gone maybe a full cycle of 7 or 10 days and you've seen this pattern, you've realized that when you see breaking news, you're not going to be surprised by what's said. This is one of the problems with our current state of the media is you can't sit there labeling everything breaking news unless it is breaking news. But if you heard it on KFI at 6 a.m. or on Twitter or whatever, at 2 p.m. it's no longer breaking news. And so when you see that on Fox or MSNBC or any of the others, if it's news, if I haven't heard it, then that's breaking. The president's pretty consistent 2 p.m. press conferences have been ratings successes because he breaks news. And people have been watching those on MSNBC and Fox and the whole thing. It's folly for the mayor of LA or the governor of California to try to compete against that. Gavin did that last week at some point. And because the thing is, I'll give him credit. I think he may have significant information to break. But don't compete with the president. And Garcetti, don't compete with Gavin. And then the nightmare scenario was last week if you can't figure this out right now, by the way, folks, here's what's going on. Public trust in our elected officials is eroding in LA County. They can't hide the fact that the LA County Board of Supervisors dislikes their sheriff intensely. And Villanueva can't act like he dislikes them intensely as well. They now have separate press conferences. Catherine Barger is claiming that this move to get Villanueva out of the Emergency Operations Center would be more in line with other counties in California and all. That's not what it is. They don't have faith in his leadership, like much of his rank and file. Because this is a guy that wants to rehire people who were fired for cause, and in the first place. He doesn't inspire confidence, and I'm not gonna take a cheap shot and make a montage of all of his mistakes in reading copy. But the bottom line is, the guy can't read. He's the highest elected official in the county. That's via the California Constitution. The sheriff is the highest elected official in every county, right? He can't read. He cannot read. I'm assuming they give him some of the remarks before he gets in front of the cameras. Apparently, it has no effect. He can't read. He needs to get a spokeshole or somebody, but he insists on leading those press conferences. He can't read. I mean, you know who else is terrible at reading prepared copy? The president. He's terrible off of teleprompters. Horrible. Because it is just so robotic, and he's terrible. Villanueva is not much better. And every time I see him, my confidence in his ability to do this job is eroded. So grading public officials that we see on a daily basis in the state of California. I don't know about you. I don't live in the city of LA. I work in the city of Burbank. I drive through the city of LA to get to the city of Burbank, but there's approximately, 10.5 or 11 million of you that live in the city of LA. I find Garcetti singularly uninspiring. And that episode yesterday when the Mercy, was it Friday, Michael Chappé, that the Mercy was tied up? Yeah. So it was like there was a noon presser with Gavin was front and center. His seal was on the podium. And Garcetti was to the right on the screen, to Gavin's left. And he was sitting there like a little brother or something, or the runner-up for Homecoming King. But some people can wear baseball hats and some just cannot. And this is Garcetti, who spent 2 weeks telling us all about his steely resolve. Which, pro tip, if someone has to tell you to follow them because they have steely resolve, probably turn around and go the other way. Because in a time of crisis, you want the person who inspires confidence, not the person with the shiniest hat. And he's running around saying, look at my shiny hat. It's made of steely resolve. So I give him a C+. But the gap between B- and C+ for him it's a lifetime away. He is not providing what sounds to me like decisive alpha male leadership. And no one wants to say this in the world of Me Too. Here are the epicenter of hashtag Me Too. Yes, even women, men, but yes, many, many women just want to hear a man take charge. You know, I would follow Margaret Thatcher through fire. If we could have a Margaret Thatcher, not a problem. When she stood up and said, we're going back to the Falcons, we are taking that MFer back from the RGs, they're going to regret poking the lion. I wanted to go and enlist. I was in high school at the time. I want to go join the Royal Marines and get in on that action, but too late. Okay. But many, many women will call me a pig for saying this, but many, many other women who have realized in these past 10 to 14 days that you've had to reach deep down in your hippocampus, deep down in your lizard brain, and realize more than anything, you want to be assured that you're going to be safe and that the bear skin is going to stay around you. You're going to be warm, that there's going to be food in front of you, and then someone has a pointy stick to protect you while you're sleeping. That's deep down. So are you getting that with Eric Garcetti? Or is he the guy who yells not the face and just has to run slightly faster than you to get away from the bear? Yeah, he's a C+. And I'm being generous when I give him a C+. Back right after this, it is Dark Sage Replace Brian Suits. In here till 11. What about civil disorder back in 1918? Was there any in LA? What happened? That and more coming up. KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Michael Chappé with the news.
The power is back on. 2100 LA DWP customers in the Pico Robertson and Beverlywood areas. A cable had to be replaced to turn the lights back on after the power went out at about 6:30 last night. Lights came back on at around 7 tonight. City of LA reports 24.
What has two thumbs and has to pee?
Infected with anxious about the virus spreading among them. Many travel in groups to fields, and some say some employers show no regard for social distancing. For up-to-the-minute info on the coronavirus, you can go to our website, KFIAM640.com, keyword virus. Check the drive on the 405 next.
You know who really loves fresh food? Amateur chefs, barbecuers, smorgasborders, snackers, bakers, and throw it in the microwavers. At Ralph's, you can get all the fresh you want at a great price with same-day pickup and delivery. Because we believe in fresh for everyone.
Ralph's is now hiring, with immediate openings available to help keep our stores open and stocked. Apply today at jobs.kroger.com.
Partly cloudy tonight, lows 40s and 50s. Tomorrow we're looking for highs in the 60s with partly cloudy conditions. We got a work zone in Van Nuys on the 405.
Yeah, this is on the 405 southbound from Roscoe to Sherman Way. Right lane's going to be off limits until 8 in the morning. Watch for slowing throughout that area. In the Cahuenga Pass, this is on the 101 northbound at Barham. That's a little fender bender. That's out of lanes and on the right shoulder there. CH is on the scene. Watch for some delays as you approach this area. And in Palmerville, 7 gets outbound from the 5 to the 19. Green left lane to the shut. Tomorrow evening, we're not going to see delays just after the Green Boulevard. This is sponsored by Hunter.org. KFI, the sky city there back. Brian.
Always bring backup glasses.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out. Food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go. Homebound.org.
Contractor license 1047-781.
Yes.
And I'm Manny Gonzalez. Manny retired after 30 years as a chief master sergeant. Then he came to work as a manager at Gallup. It's time for us to talk about indoor air quality. Tell us about the equipment, Manny, and how
Look at my hair now.
our system begins with the MERV 16 filtration system. That's
I better go back with a hat.
absolutely. And then what? Then the air passes through an ultraviolet germicidal.
Yeah, I was really bad about ConnectPal. I'm way better now.
Finished. Sorry, Manny. Go ahead. And to give that ultraviolet germicidal light sufficient time to do its job,
I'm probably going to start doing a 9 a.m.
slow down the germs.
basically a 9 a.m. morning show
It is, Ken.
on ConnectPal,
Not the easy way.
and then go do it live on YouTube every day at noon.
Air quality from Gallup.
So if you go to connectpal.com, Dark Secret Place.
GTL.com.
This is an American Red Cross blood donation alert. We are currently facing a severe blood shortage during this coronavirus outbreak. Healthy blood and platelet donors are asked to make an appointment to give now. Donating blood is safe and can help save lives. Cancer patients, accident victims, and so many others continue to need life-saving transfusions. So please schedule your appointment now by visiting redcrossblood.org or calling 1-800-RED-CROSS. You can make a difference.
The founders of SoftRep.com are former Navy SEALs and Special Ops guys with content and products tailored to make sure you have real information and protection. And
God damn, how many times we got to How to Survive by David Hudson.
masks, first aid kits, water filters.
Here,
anything
I'll
and
put it
everything
up.
you need to keep you and your family safe during an emergency. Vetted by military professionals.
In fact, I'll put a link up.
ASAP to your doorstep. So make sure your go bag is up to date. It's so fresh.
How much time?
That's SOFREP.com.
Everybody loves the thought about 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Darn, if you're sick of struggling financially, if you have some bad debt dragging you down, Oak Tree Law can help.
A father in Pasadena fell $48,000 behind on his mortgage, and the bank issued a sale date on his home. Oak Tree Law stepped in and immediately stopped the sale date and got a modification with a lower interest and payment.
Another story from Murrieta. A woman was $99,000 in credit card debt, wages being garnished. Oak Tree Law was able to erase 100% of the debt and remove the wage garnishment entirely.
A listener from West Covina had a $250,000 lien placed on their house from a failed business. Oak Tree Law was able to get the lien stripped off the property and eliminate $486,000 in credit card and business debt.
Real stories, real people. So no matter what your situation is, no matter what kind of debt you have, if you need help and you're tired of stressing, call Oak Tree Law right now. 800-542-2949. 800-542-2949.
I just posted it on Twitter.
800-542-2949.
He learned to pitch.
And you'll note I'm not sending you through some paywall. I don't do that with books. You're going right to the Amazon page. I don't get credit for this.
Formula that repairs bare spots in only 2 weeks or less. Pennington's been trusted since 1945, and now it works even faster. One Step Complete from Pennington. Honest green. Get your lawn ready for any occasion. Head to your local retailer to pick up One Step Complete.
Do you want to learn to speak a new language but don't have enough time? Then you need to try Babbel, a language learning app that you can try for free right now at Babbel.com. Babbel's lessons are just 15 minutes or less, and you can go at your own pace. You'll be amazed at how easy Babbel makes it. Start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Just download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com now. That's Babbel.com.
The free iHeartRadio app is always here to make sure you have access to the information you need and, just as important, the entertainment you need. Stay connected to your favorite stations, music, and podcasts.
All right, I'm cued.
Speakers, smart TVs, and more. Coronavirus podcasts updated daily to give you the latest information. Playlists to help you stay focused while you work from home. And stations like 24/7 Comedy when you need to laugh. Here when you need it. And always free. Download the iHeartRadio app now.
Tip: resist the urge to buy up everything you see at the store. Bad quarantine tip: forgetting to buy deodorant. Get at least one can, please. It's like you can't even smell yourself anymore. KFI AM 640. More stimulating talk.
Who can name this tune? I'm not talking on KFI until someone names this tune. When I turn the mic on, it turns this off. KFI AM 640, The Dark Secret Place, live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. We've got, what do we have? 218 people in the room watching the live stream at unsheepyourself.com. And answering your questions during commercials, of course, not during the show and the whole thing. Well, so you know who wants the country shut down, and by golly, he's just tough enough possibly to do it, is Conor McGregor, MMA fighter. Didn't he just re-win Tyler, do you watch that? Didn't he just re-win a belt 2 weeks ago? Oh, no, it was about a month ago. Wasn't it about a month ago? It was that 42-second fight where there was 8 hours of undercard, and then anywho, so he's in a tight shirt, looking at the camera, and he wants the president of Ireland to call out the army.
Has now taken place, and that is just what we need. I applaud. However, I would like an understanding of our airports. Our airports must shut. The only flights to take place is to be for our essential medical equipment, or to bring our medical staff abroad back home to support. The airports must be shut for everything else.
What the hell language is that? How do you don't shoot airports? That's the last place where you should be shooting. No, you don't shoot at the airports. He's wrong about you don't shoot the airport.
Please make wherever you are your home. We're doing your country an incredible deed by staying put. We will get past this. It is not forever, but it is for now.
Long pause.
15,000 Gardaí available. Necessary. However, it is necessary. I urge the government to utilise our defence forces alongside on Garda Síochána and for full 24-hour patrol. We cannot go by chance here. Any less than full adherence to these newly put forth methods.
Put fort. So there he is, apparently speaking English, and the whole, and a little bit of Gaelic there, because the the national police force in Ireland is the Gardaí. Garda Síochána. So as long as we're all binge watching and looking for movies that you haven't seen, a pretty obscure but great little movie came out a couple of years ago. Don Cheadle, American actor, plays an FBI agent who goes to Ireland where he has to liaise and work with Brandon Gleeson, that Irish actor. And the movie's called Garda, Garda. Really good little movie. And it just, I don't think it was marketed right. I want to say about 5 years old, 5 or 6 years old. It wasn't marketed right, but it's a gem of a little movie. And Cheadle, plays a really professional FBI guy. And the movie surprises you, just sort of time after time. The stereotypes that go back and forth are really funny, because the deal is the Irish cop, Brendan Gleeson, he assumes that all African Americans must have grown up in the inner city. And he makes this assumption about Don Cheadle. And Don Cheadle tells him that he actually grew up in a very wealthy home and he used to ski in Aspen and all this. And there's a bunch of little surprising things in there. But anyway, really good movie. When you get bored and you have watched Death of Stalin, which is a required viewing. In fact, I'll tell you what, before you watch Death of Stalin, I'll go on YouTube tomorrow or on connectpal.com, and I'll walk you through the 10, you need a 5 or 10 minute briefing before you fully understand how funny Death of Stalin is and why I continually mention it in my must-see movies. The first wave on Chinese industry happened back in late January and February, when worldwide businesses were calling factories saying, hey, what about my order? You're not going to shut down till my order's fulfilled, right? I got a boat waiting in Shanghai. Where's my order? Well, now the second wave is hitting Chinese industry, and it's worldwide. 60%, I didn't know this, Europe is responsible for 60% of much of China's manufacturing. All these European manufacturers right now are calling saying, yeah, my order, put it on hold. And that's also happening with American companies that have farmed out their manufacturing, their heavy manufacturing to China. Is they're looking at our economy right now. No one's buying nothing, and they're saying, our order for 80,000 sit-on-top kayaks by July. Yeah, can you hang on to those, please? They're just not selling right now. Spoiler alert, by the way, the 15 days, that's not going to be lifted tomorrow. If you're thinking that everything just goes back to normal tomorrow, don't hold your breath. And that's part of the don't be surprised by surprise thing. When we come back, what about civil disorder in 1918? Was it just shootouts in LA? What was happening 102 years ago with the deadliest pandemic just starting its second wave around the world? I'll tell you what happened. What LA looked like 102 years ago. Right after this, it is the Dark Seeker Place. Brian Suits back in a second. KFI AM 640 live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Michael Chappé with the news. Well, people got leprosy. They just, it wasn't pandemic. It was infectious. But one guy with leprosy didn't turn around and infect 3 people. They were usually thrown into a well or something. I mean, a cave, not a well. See Ben-Hur.
California today that shifted gears and is now refurbishing hundreds of ventilators for the state. Many are headed to LA next week. The LA County official says that it looks like people are following the county's order to stay off the beaches and nature trails to slow the spread of the coronavirus.
Yeah, people always tell me about Homeland. And I've dipped in. I've given it a couple shots, and I'm just not really down. Fauda on Netflix, Fauda, F-A-U-D-A. Fauda is Arabic for chaos. Fauda was made by this former Israeli IDF counterterrorism guy who's now an actor. And it's terrific. Fauda season 1. I'm only 2 episodes into season 2, but it's terrific. And every time I watch Homeland, I'm not seeing the authenticity there. Same with Jack Ryan. There's a certain show on this radio station that loves Jack Ryan. I got 3 episodes into it, and it just is so phony. The John Krasinski Jack Ryan, in my experience, I just didn't like it. I just didn't like it. Yeah, The Great Influenza by John Barry. Yeah, but you know there was you know from 1919 on the third wave of the Spanish influenza was the fall of 1919. And there was sort of an economic hangover because we lost 650,000 primarily working age adults. You know, so there was a lot of expansion that couldn't occur. You know, this would be way, way different. To be perfectly demographically neutral and objective about it, the reality is this is killing people who are out of their active, productive working years, you know, mainly retirees. And the idea that you would keep productive working age Americans from going to work.
Why do you think our death toll is, or our percentage of deaths per infection is a little higher than New York even?
Because we're being stingier with the tests. I was going to play Rockin' Pneumonia and the Boogie Woogie Flu, but it's a bad song. By the way, pro tip, when I say something like an unnamed show or whatever, don't ask me, don't throw names out there. Just understand what I'm saying. That we don't fish off the company pier, you know, but I know that you're not naive and you know everything about KFI, okay? That's why there should be a weekly show about that week on KFI.
First partner? She's the first partner.
Yeah.
First lady.
Yeah, remember that? When he got inaugurated, she announced that it was sexist to be first lady because she's a lady and stuff. So she'd be first partner. But yeah. So that's the deal. When I say an unnamed, you know, whatever. That is the funny part, though, is that Shannon and Gary and I go back to Seattle. You know, we go way back to Cairo and Como. Shannon was at KIRO. Gary was at Como, KOMO, and I left Cairo and went across town to Como, KVI, America's first right-wing radio station. And so we know each other from way back then. Gary and I were fired by the same asshole. This guy, Gary was a field reporter. Gary wanted to be an anchor. And our common foe told Gary that he would never be an anchor. So Gary left and winds up his next job. He's the morning anchor on KFI. KOMO is a Seattle radio and TV station. Uncued. Cairo is also. When I switched boats and went to KOMO, I referred to the competition as capital of Egypt. Get it? It's Cairo. We're gonna do some Wilson Pickett here.
So you can take a break and finish that puzzle, coffee, or whatever.
We'll fill you in when you're ready.
We got this. And we're all in this together.
KFI, AM 640. More stimulating talk.
KFI AM 640. Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Brian Suits here on The Dark Secret Place. The world is darker and secreter. A little more open, though, on some other stuff. Real quickly, I don't know. I'm trying to get my daughter to play along with this. But for a lot of you, sort of the psychology of your kids right now is a mystery to a lot of you. And you're hoping to get through this without your kids, hopefully being scarred or anything. And we are sort of overly concerned about childhood trauma, frankly, because we haven't seen, could it get worse? Yeah, it could get worse. But my daughter and I, what was it, Friday? No, Thursday. We just got cabin fever. And we, around like 3:30 in the afternoon, I just said, you want to just go to we have a favorite hotel down here in Toluca Lake, about 2 blocks away from KFI. And I said, you want to go to La Tangerine and just get in their pool and just watch TV and just get the hell out of here. And so we did. We just packed some swimsuits and flip-flops and came down here to Toluca Lake. And we were the only people at the hotel. So it's a great little hotel. It's been redone, very hipsterized and everything. But it's surrounded by a whole bunch of great restaurants in Toluca Lake. And actually, I think technically it's in Burbank. But there's a ramen place a block away, bunch of Italian places at Chipotle. So just call one, spin the wheel and go get the takeout. And we just, she brought her tablet and put her headphones on. And we just left the house and just decompressed in 2 big queen beds. And I got takeout ramen and we just recharged the batteries and drove home at 9 a.m. It was great. And so I realized my daughter has a lot of grit, a lot of determination. She's really, really good at being honest with me about, and that's the other thing is I don't know. We don't live in an apartment. We don't live in a neighborhood or a cul-de-sac. We're way, way different. However, I just flat out ask her, do you want to be alone? Do you want me to leave the house? Or do you want to leave? Because sometimes she'll take her tablet or take a book and grab a dog and she'll just go outside. And we have a bunch of seats set up all around the property. And she'll just go pick a seat, sit there in the sun, for an hour or two. And there's no sin in that. Or I'll leave. And I got to tell you, my Fitbit is so happy with me. I'm hitting my step count by noon every day. And it usually gives me till about 8 p.m. But I'm just nailing it. So anyway, there's a psychology to that. And you should not discount your kids for their resolve. Just continue assuring them that you got this. You're prepared for anything. They miss their friends. Maybe they're fighting for the Xbox or whatever, but they're going to remember this time, and hopefully they remember you as giving them clear guidance, sets of rules, and that it's an old cliche, but it's true. Kids do like a schedule, and when you give them a schedule, and like in our case, there has to be an outside hour for every hour on the Xbox, or she can buy time by doing a full cycle of wash, dryer, fold, put it on the shelves, or the dishwasher. She can be on the Xbox while the dishes are washing, and then she has to empty it, things like that. And that's why I, kind of reward her when I say, hey, let's break the rules and, go to a hotel. And so that's totally true. But I'd say the number one sin, do not, if you're a couple, if you're married, if there's 2 parents in the household, don't argue in front of the kids. Don't ever let them think that this is getting to you. Don't ever let them think that. Don't overdose them on the press conferences either, by the way. If you can just stream it on KFI, good. Even we've pulled back on that crap because there was too much circular jerkular going on. But that's what I would say with your kids is they need to see that you're not going to fail them, that you're not scared, nothing's going to scare you, the whole thing. And they'll look back on this. It'll be, if they're lucky and they have a prosperous, peaceful life, then this will be one of the stories that they tell. If we're unlucky and this goes turbo, then the stories will get better. So as always, I plan for the worst. People ask me, what's my assessment? My assessment is, hell yeah, I can get way, way worse. but I hope it doesn't. So I always have to add those 4 words. I wish Garcetti would, when he says that we're all in love and I need you now, we're all in love and everything is fine right now. He needs to add so far. Because he's not, it's a nasty surprise when his Angelinos, including people who live in Los Angeles, residents of LA, are told that it's out of control. We don't know what we're doing. And you can't buy a gun anymore. But don't worry, we're going to empty the jails. So what about 1918, 1919? Did they empty the jails? Oh, hell no, they didn't. First of all, the possibility of calling up the California Army National Guard in 1918, 1919, that didn't happen because the bulk of the California Guard was already activated in 1917 to go fight World War I. Now, California has a backup crew called the California State Militia. Trust me, you don't want them anywhere near firearms or with the authority to detain you. With all due respect, and I thank them for their service and the whole thing, they're the people who couldn't get into the military in general. And in the event that a governor has to stand his National Guard to go fight for the country in Cuba or in France or whatever, then there's this backup crew. And like I say, you're in a really bad state, if metaphorically in a bad state, and in reality in a bad state if they're out there enforcing civil order. Back in 1918, that influenza came in 3 waves, right? In the spring, it originated in Kansas, and it wasn't that deadly that anyone really raised a stink about it. In fact, when American troops got to Europe and brought it with them, the Royal Navy found 10,000 cases. They diagnosed 10,000 guys with what would turn out to be called the Spanish influenza incorrectly. And out of those, only 3 died, which was a normal death rate. In fact, a little higher, but it didn't raise any flags. Then American troops hit the trenches in April and the summer and fall of 1917. In April of 1918, and they brought the flu with them. And then it kind of faded away. And a lot of British and French and even Germans on the other side of no man's land just called it the trench funk. And it was a 3 or 4 day thing. Then it mutated very aggressively, and it came back in the fall of 1918, September, October, November, and it was killing 25 young people per day in Los Angeles, 5 or 6 per day in Burbank. Now, keep in mind, these places were way smaller. So what happened? When the mayors of the West Coast towns began issuing their harsh mandatory quarantine rules, by and large, people followed them because they were terrified. Seeing literal piles of bodies on Western Avenue in downtown LA until the coroner picked them up at 5 p.m. You don't need much more convincing after that. So people quarantined, and there were no looters. Well, there were, but you know what? There were shoot-on-sight orders for looters, and then, oh, by the way, most of the business owners had guns anyway. This was a time when firearm ownership was very common in the city of LA, and there were not shootouts in the streets because a density of gun ownership actually leads to less crime, especially in a time of civil disorder. So civil order never really broke down. The civil order of walking down the street and going to a store and then hitting a theater broke down. But the actual, were there parades of people going into Circuit City and coming out with big screens circa 1992? No, there were not. Were there rooftop Koreans like in 92? No, there didn't have to be. But, I should point out that the rooftop Korean, if you recall 1992, those people were absolutely within their constitutional rights to wield an assault rifle on the roof of their business in absence of all civil authority going back to the station house. They protected their businesses, and it was their right. So that in 1918, 1919 was the reason that there was not widespread looting or anything like this, because there was a cost to looting. 1906, the earthquake hit San Francisco. By sundown on that day, federal troops were patrolling the streets of San Francisco, shooting looters. So the looting It came and went pretty damn quick. We'll be back in just a second. It is the Dark Secret Place Brian Suits back here at the second KFI M640. Turns out all this stuff was written down. It's happened in the past. There's a playbook. You can access it. It's amazing. When we come back, the North Koreans begging to be heard, fire 2 missiles. That and more live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. Michael Chappé with the news.
California's restaurant industry is warned 30% of its businesses could close permanently without help from the state because of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. In a letter to Governor Newsom, the California Restaurant Association said directives that enforce the closure of dining.
Oh, I still haven't played the LAPD shooing the skateboarders.
Been in business for more than 70 years, is closing its doors for good tomorrow. Delhi says in a statement they thought that they could stay open for delivery and takeout only in today's climate, but decided
Mind you.
to shut its doors. SeaWorld says it is furloughing 90% of its workforce because of the pandemic.
Big crisis. It is China who stands out and saved the world. Up to now, we have helped 82 countries and organizations worldwide. Among them, some are our old friends, but some are not so friendly to us before. But still, we decided to stretch out our helping hands to all of them, despite the fact that we are recovering from the epidemic ourselves.
The great
Because for many
Chinese
of these countries,
propaganda.
China is their last and only hope. Without the help from China, they probably will never be able to survive this pandemic. So that's why we say today's China is more than the country itself. It is very much part of Asia as well as the world. In many movies, one single American can save the world. However, in reality, when the mankind facing a big crisis, it is China who stands out and saves the world. Up to now, we have helped 82 countries and organizations worldwide. Among them, some are our old friends, but some are not so friendly to us before. But still, we decided to stretch out our help.
Tomorrow, highs in the afternoon tomorrow, low to mid-60s. Checking on that work zone in Commerce on the 710.
Yeah, the 710 southbound from the 5 to Atlantic. Caltrans gonna get
Olha essa porra aí, ó. Os caras comem rato, velho.
stop and go from Olympic. Irwindale, this is on the 605 southbound at Live Oak. We have a crash. It's out of lanes and in the center divider, but watch for looking delays as you approach. In the Coalinga Pass, we have good news. Earlier crash on the 101 northbound at Barham has been cleared. Your drive is recovering in that area. This report is sponsored by the Crown Vic Colitis Foundation. KFI in the Sky helps get you there faster. I'm Brian Bank.
Use your power to cure and pedal with a purpose at Spin for Crohn's and Colitis Cures. Grab some friends to join you for this high-energy indoor cycling event benefiting the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. Visit spin4.org to learn more.
Contractor license 1047-781.
$129 will make a world of difference in the efficiency of your air conditioner, because just $129 is all the cost to have one of my genius dental technicians come to your home to perform a complete system rejuvenation.
We're going to clean and adjust your air conditioner and make 6 critical adjustments to bring it back to factory specs.
Rejuvenation reduces breakdowns and makes your AC last longer.
A lot longer. Rejuvenation.
And we'll clean the coils the right way, not the easy way. You do not want to face Ken Goodrich if he finds out you did it the easy way.
You can't imagine how much difference it makes when the coils have been cleaned the right way. 6 critical adjustments and external coil cleaning the right way. Kenny and the boys are going to make your air conditioner sing like paparazzi.
I think you mean Pavarotti.
Yeah, him too.
Yeah, Goettl. We're the ones to call.
But it's hard to spell.
You know who really loves fresh food? Amateur chefs, barbecuers, smorgasborders, snackers, bakers, and throw it in the microwavers. At Ralph's, you can get all the fresh you want at a great price with same-day pickup and delivery. Because we believe in fresh for everyone.
Ralph's is now hiring. With immediate openings to help keep our
How much time?
Apply today at jobs.kroger.com.
About 2.5.
Okay. Then yes, I've got hour 3 segments 1, 2, 3, 4, and they all need bumpers. So fielder's choice.
Mission and Hope, and in Applebell, St. Mary. In Los Angeles County, we're Tarzano, St. Joseph, St. John's, Little Company of Mary, and Holy Cross. When you choose Providence, you're choosing extraordinary love. Visit chooseprovidence.org.
Are you thinking about selling your investments and getting out of the market right now? Hi, I'm Rick Edelman with 4 quick questions before you do. Do you have a diversified portfolio?
Nope. Sloop John B. halfway through.
All uncertain, call us at 888-PLAN-RIP. That's 888-PLAN-RIP. Or visit us at rickedelman.com. That's
RiceDelman.com.
Fox presents IR's Living Room Concert for America. See once-in-a-lifetime performances by Alicia Keys, Backstreet Boys, Billie Eilish, Louis Armstrong from Green Day, Camila Cabello, Dave Grohl, Her, Mariah Carey, Sam Smith, Tim McGraw, and more. Performing from their living rooms into yours. Hosted by Elton John. And we'll salute organizations like Feeding America and First Responders Children's Foundation. Tomorrow night at 6, listen to Hit Nation on iHeartRadio and watch on Fox 11.
If you're feeling a little overwhelmed right now, just imagine how the people stocking the shelves feel. We appreciate them because we're all in this together.
KFI AM 640.
Here till 11. So here is the deal. Earlier today, Royal Saudi Air Defense Forces successfully intercepted 2 short-range ballistic missiles, apparently, fired from Yemen by Houthi rebels. And these were Iranian-supplied, Iranian-built short-range ballistic missiles. The Iranians are no longer even trying to hide it. I mean, they don't like stencil out the Farsi or anything. They just say, nah, as is, just let her rip. Nor are the North Koreans, because this we know from a few hours ago. North Korea fired what appeared to be 2 short-range ballistic missiles into the ocean off its east coast on Sunday. The latest in an unprecedented flurry of launches as South Korea decried as inappropriate amid or rather, they probably said inappropriate amid the global coronavirus pandemic, which I don't know why that matters. I mean, it's as good a time as any time to test your multiple launch rocket systems. A correction to Reuters, these are not ballistic missiles. The missiles they've been testing for the last, I think, 3 weeks. March 2nd, and then 2 weeks ago, and then today. It is a large multiple launch rocket system rocket, but it's not ballistic. Ballistic describes a rocket or a bullet fired into the air that is effectively an arrow. And so you're predicting where it's going to land because of your extensive ballistic tables, like a piece of artillery. So the difference between a Minuteman missile or a North Korean Hwasong-15 and an artillery round is the range. This is a different deal altogether. So calling it a ballistic missile is incorrect. What the North Koreans are doing is they have a family of missiles that can go a medium range out to 300 kilometers. In other words, from the middle of North Korea, it can hit any target in South Korea. But altitude-wise, it doesn't crack 19 kilometers or so. So about 12 miles high, 13 miles, right? So it's not shooting way up there like a ballistic missile, where you have a chance in the boost phase to hit it on the way up. And then maybe when it's up in space and it's coming back, an Aegis cruiser can shoot it down, or the Alaska missile defense guys at Fort Greely can shoot it down, or on the way back down, the theater high altitude air defense can hit it. Now, this is a different deal altogether. And the North Koreans appear to be in with both feet on a technology that the Russians first began playing with in the 90s. And that is a nuclear delivered solid fuel missile. It's not a cruise missile. It doesn't take 5 hours to go 400 miles. It's still a solid fuel rocket, and it's still going Mach 4. But the difference is it's down in the atmosphere to where control surfaces on the rocket, specifically on the nose, can actually affect its path. So the fact that it does that completely trumps our anti-ballistic missile defense, which is based on a missile leaving a launch pad and then orienting itself on a certain heading at a certain angle and staying then on that predictable ballistic path. These are missiles that can maneuver right up until terminal phase. I mean, 20 miles away or so. And so a ballistic missile, like I say, looks like an arrow shot into the air. In fact, to get from North Korea to Olathe, Kansas, it would leave the Korean Peninsula at approximately 47 degrees angle. It would launch straight up and then orient itself through gyroscope, and it would get on that path at that speed, and 40 minutes later it would detonate 5,000 feet over Olathe, Kansas, or Lodge Grass, Montana, or Bill Handel's house, or whatever, right? Well, this is different, and we have a defense for that. That's what anti-ballistic missile defense at Vandenberg is for. The missile has to be ballistic. It can't launch in North Korea and then never crack 20 miles in altitude at Mach 4. We'd never intercept that because we have nothing that can intercept that. So anyway, the North Koreans continue to test this. So far, they're not testing missiles that are big enough for their nuclear, their working model of an H-bomb. And that's why the North Koreans are saying, hey, this is just artillery practice. What do you mean? We're not violating any unspoken or unwritten agreement. This is not a ballistic missile test, so that's what's going on. All right, when we come back, a whole bunch of subjects, Iwo Jima, all kinds of stuff, Mata Hari, all of it. For you Waraholics, hour number 3 is right around the corner. It's the Dark Secret Place. Brian Suits here until 11, KFI, AM 640, live everywhere on the iHeart Radio app. So I'm running out of electrical power.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere on the iHeart Radio app.
More cases. I'm Michael Chabay, live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. Orange County has a new COVID-19 website. It includes a number of patients who live in each city. Orange County Healthcare's David Salea says that the city info was added because of a demand from the community.
City numbers should not be interpreted to reflect where transmission is geographically focused or not. COVID-19 transmission is a risk countywide.
Orange County now has 4 confirmed deaths and 403 cases. Health officials say more deaths and are expected, so people should continue.
All right, we will chalk this one up, and I'll recharge my phone, and we'll be back tomorrow night for Super Hyperlocal Sunday. I'll do a liver around noon tomorrow, and then I will probably start posting ConnectPal so that you can listen to it at home by 9 a.m. And then maybe doing a live YouTube in the morning. Part of the issue is that, I got to be a team player. I can't take listeners away from KFI. But you can be, if you want an alternative in the morning, I could, that's how we could justify it. So, all right. So we will see you tomorrow.